It's like what is happiness and what is sadness? I think that joy is an energy of emotion. It's like, I like the Naval quote, happiness is peace in motion. I think about that when it comes to music too. It's like, what is peace in motion? Peace in motion is like somebody who doesn't have worries, concerns, they're content, but they're moving, they're dancing, there's something that they're doing. So it's like, what visualizes peace? It's like serenity. I'm moving through this whole wide world.
Dude, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
No, honestly.
Yeah.
Man, I've known you for like probably 3, maybe 4 years now.
4 years, I'd say.
And we originally met on, actually, you were performing on a boat.
Yeah.
At the Harbourfront here in Toronto.
2021, yeah.
I was with a bunch of friends at the time, and you were on a boat. Were you solo? No, you were with a band.
I was with the band.
Yeah. That was fun. It was during the summer, and we just like walked by, and we decided to hang out for a bit. And I think you must have introduced yourself and, said what your IG was or whatever. And then I think I posted a story or two or something, and we got connected that way, and that was that.
100%. You were like so kind back then. I mean, I think it really speaks to your work ethic, where it's like you really enthusiastically just like I was just thinking about playing live, and somebody approached me, which was you, and said like, hey, I'd love to take some photos sometime, or I'd love to like shoot some video sometime. And like, I just hadn't really thought of that as like a thing that I should be doing or that I could be doing. And you like really, I think during that time, it's like, that was kind of my origin story with Toronto, was playing on that boat.
How long had you lived in Toronto when you were, when I met you first?
Probably like 6 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's fresh.
I was very fresh.
Yeah.
And so, so I was just trying to figure out how to make it as a performer, which is like, when you're at the beginning of that, it's like you're very low on the curve.
Right.
And you were just like, you were so crucial, man. And like me getting on my feet in a huge way, like as a performer in the city. So thank you, man. Like you're the freaking best.
Oh my goodness gracious. But one question I never asked you up until today is how you thought of the name Kubla.
How have I thought of the name Kubla?
Yeah.
Kubla is from the poem Kubla Khan, which is a poem by the English poet Samuel Coleridge from like the 18th century, like the 1700s. And he was like a pretty influential romantic poet. So it's like really like vivid imagery, really kind of like almost dreamlike, very powerful feeling metaphors, very powerful feeling. Dreamlike is the best way to describe it. But for me, that poem was really formative because when I was in high school, I was in literature class and we were just like reading a bunch of poems. And it was the one class in school that I really excelled in. And we studied his poem called Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is, there's a couple of somewhat famous quotes from it. Like there's one, which is the metaphor of the albatross around the neck, which like not everyone in this day and age would have heard of, but like that was like really big and like over the past century, that was like it's like a metaphor for like a burden that you have to carry. And then there's another quote, which is water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. That's also from Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And we were studying that poem and I was just like, whoa, this is like literally this poem is like surreal. Like I was like being really affected by this poetry. And it was like the first time in my life I was really being affected by poetry in this way. And I read this other poem by him called Kubla Khan. And I was just like mesmerized. And I couldn't find anything up until now, honestly, up until like the age of AI, which I think can really like parse a lot of different interpretations of poems. But I was looking through interpretations of the poem and I could only really find how he wrote it, which he was like, he like took a bunch of opium and was like just had like a feverish opium dream and then wrote this poem. That's like the story of the poem. But the poem is about him dreaming of this like tamed piece of nature, this raging river that goes into this dome that Kubla Khan, who's like He was like the grandson of Genghis Khan.
Yep. Okay.
Had built called Xanadu. Xanadu is also like a pretty famous kind of piece of imagery. There's lots of movies called Xanadu. There's like lots of stories about Xanadu as an idea. It's like this it's like back in the day in the West when like Asia was like very mystical, and they were like it's like a new frontier. Like you don't know what's going on over there. They're doing magic over there.
Right.
And it was like this magical paradise place. And so the idea was about this dome that he had built to like tame the nature. So like the huge rivers turned into like beautiful, simple streams. And then after it turned back into the river and went all the way down into these ice caves that were like screaming with prophecies of war. Like it was just like this very vivid poem. And to me, it's just like really what art's about to me, which is the idea that we have like this raging river within us that we're trying to like of all these impulses and all this animalism that we're trying to understand. And through understanding it, we create this art, which is us kind of like turning it into these beautiful streams in this beautiful kind of like paradisal place. Like we make it beautiful. And so I just thought that was a really powerful piece of imagery for me as an artist. And so I was kind of thinking about artist names that felt kind of like R&B and maybe a little bit soulful, because my name Kieran, even though it's like I love my name, but like Kieran McMillan to me is like I'm playing like dun da dun dun da like acoustic guitar. I'm singing. I've got an Irish accent. Like it's to me it's not. It doesn't really speak to my music. So I was like looking for word sounds that like spoke to my music, and Kubla really popped out to me. I was originally going to call it like Kubla Khan or Kubla Calm, or my initials are also KALM, Calm.
Oh, cool.
So I was like maybe I'll go for that, and then I just settled on Kubla. I was just like I just feel good about it, and it's funny because like a lot of other people in my life were like, you should just call yourself Kieran, like why you're choosing a name and stuff like that, and I was just like, I don't know, it just feels good.
That's it.
I can't tell you. I just I really like the meaning behind it. I love explaining the meaning behind it. It's not random.
Yep.
But at the same time, it might as well be random. Like it's just like fundamentally the top of my list is I just like the way the name sounds. And
right.
Then all the meaning after that is like it's nice to have that, but like nice to have that story. But yeah.
And how long have you had that alias now?
I think 5 years.
And has that been basically your entire time as a professional public-facing musician?
No, it's about like I'd say like maybe a third or like maybe 5/8 of the time.
Okay.
Or no, like 3/8 of the time. Like my first, from when I was 18 until I was like probably 24, I was like leading bands. I was an actor. I was doing theater music. And I had a band called Electric Sex Panther.
Awesome.
And I wasn't the front man, but I decided that I wanted to pursue something that was a lot more a lot more integral and a lot more aligned.
Okay.
So like I wanted to integrate myself completely, like all the parts of myself, all the acting, all the writing, all the producing, because I was just doing so many things. I was like
right.
producing, I was writing, I was engineering, I was doing sound, I was playing guitar, I was singing, I was just like doing so many different things. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, I've got to make this all one thing. If I don't make this all one thing, I'm going to turn out like, because there are lots of people that I grew up around who were like mentors to me, but they did like a million different things. Like they played like, they were like a brilliant violin player, brilliant accordion player, brilliant, shout out Adrian Dolan, brilliant engineer and brilliant producer and like excellent arranger. And they were doing a million things. And they make a solid living off of that, but I also just saw the way that their brain worked and how they lived, and it wasn't the same as me. And so I just decided that I wanted to just like narrow myself, but using all of my abilities. And so that's why I chose to go the artist route, which is, it's been the best decision I've ever made alongside moving to Toronto. It's been joyful.
On that note of moving to Toronto, where did you grow up?
Victoria, BC.
That's one of my not Victoria, but the island
Yeah.
is one of my favorite places in Canada.
It's
if
one
not
of the best
world.
places in Canada and one of the best places in the world.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
How was your upbringing like in terms of, were you always around music from the jump? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, both my parents are musicians. So you've musician parents too, right?
My dad studied performance jazz
Yeah,
in
exactly.
college,
Yeah.
and a ton of bands over the years. My mom and my mom's side of the family were all like folk musicians.
Amazing.
For generations back. So yeah.
I feel like we relate on that level because
Definitely.
your dad studied bass, right?
Yep.
Yeah, my dad's a bass player too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
Nice.
he played bass in a band called Spirit of the West, which was a really big band in Vancouver.
Nice.
And you know the song "You'll Have to Excuse Me, I'm
Yes.
Not It." They wrote that song.
What?
Yeah, that's their tune.
That's crazy.
I know. Yeah, yeah.
That's a crazy
big,
fact.
big Canadian tune. So
Yeah.
if you were born before like 95, it's more than likely you know it. It's just a funny fact to whip out. Like
Yeah.
when I meet somebody and I'm like yeah, I meet somebody and I kind of get their vibe and I'm like, my dad's in Spirit of the West, and they're like, what? Excuse me. I'm like yeah. So funny flex. It's a really funny flex.
That's up there for like perfect replacement for the national anthem.
100%. Yeah, it's a very Canadian thing.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so my dad was in Spirit of the West, and then my mom is a singer-songwriter and an actor. And so I was just always around a really musical community. Similar to you, it's like folk musicians.
Right.
And, my uncle and my mom play in a band together too. And
Wow.
so I just grew up with that sense that like music is a thing that you can do. But I also kind of grew up with this sense that my family had a bit of unfinished business. Like I grew up with this sense that my family was never really good with money. My family, like no one in my family except for my dad, eventually bought like a house in a small town. But no one in my family owns property. Like my family's pretty like lower middle class. So I really wanted to like be like, okay, I'm gonna be the one that like redeems the artistic talent that is within my family, because there's a lot of really great talent in my family. But it's interesting because it's just not that well recognized, and I feel like there's a story within the general culture of our society that talent should get recognized or does get recognized, and I kind of want to help tell the story that it's not entirely just up to like there's a lot of gatekeeping and a lot of politics within the industry, which is, it's not a bad thing. Like it's just part of being a person. It's just like art. Everyone wants to be an artist. It seems like a great life to most people. So you have to have your wits about you when it comes to what deals you sign, where it is that you put your time, where it is that you put your energy.
How you navigate the space. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what role now does money play for you in the success formula?
That's a good question. I think money in the success formula just gives me freedom. The more money that I'm able to make, the more I'm able to explore. I'm not particularly materialistic. I like a nice guitar. I like nice tools. As you know as a videographer.
We know. Yes.
Nice tools are nice. But also you can make do with making do with good stuff. Like as you also well know is like it's one thing to have like a nice camera with a nice sensor. The same thing as one thing to have like a nice microphone that just like really, that's your input. That's where all the quality is going to come from. But when it comes to like, you don't need to have like premium sound insulation or anything like that. So it's just to demonstrate that money is important, but only like you don't have to make everything expensive. And so for me, I look at money as just freedom bucks. Just like freedom tokens that give me the freedom to say no to things and give me the freedom to, and I'm really blessed too, because money also kind of gets in the way. Like when it comes to as I'm sure you know, with certain clients and with certain people that you've worked with, is that sometimes money creates distance. And so I like to view money as something that can provide freedom, but it can also provide disconnection and transactionalism, and which isn't such a bad thing, because everything is an energy exchange. But if it becomes too centered around that as like the short-term prospect, like if you meet somebody and they're like all they're desperate for is just to make money, then it's really hard to trust them. It's also really hard to rely on that, because that they can just be bought. And so I really try to avoid being that. I try to avoid like always just going for the dollar, and I try to honor my relationships as much as I can, and ensure that I'm not always just going for the bigger money. There's more meaningful things in life. I don't exactly know what those things are in terms of the hierarchy of things, but I know that there are many things that I would not trade money for in terms of my relationships.
I mean, money can't possibly be it because there are so many feelings that we experience, and I know you can attest to this, that you can't explain. You literally can't even attach a feeling to it.
Totally.
It is so internal to the human experience. And I think about, a sense of euphoria, a sense of joy that money might have given you access to that thing, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's not the thing that is actually making you feel that way.
Definitely.
It's just an enabler.
100%.
Yeah.
And if you look at the things too, if you look at the range of things that give you that feeling and the range of things that money gives you access to, there's like actually, you'll notice that there's like, it's a very scattered relationship. And sometimes people conflate those things. Like novelty, money can buy you a lot of novelty. It can give you access to a lot of novelty. Because sometimes it's not even about exchanging money for a good. Sometimes it's just about having money so you can like get into a space where the good is.
Yes.
But the issue kind of becomes that those things aren't necessarily the things of value. And if you constantly fill your time with those, you miss out on the things that are of real value, like a good relationship with family, a good relationship with something I realize is that there's no amount of money that can buy me more time with my mom. There's no amount of money that can buy me more time with my brother. There's no amount of money that can make me meet better musicians. There's an amount of money that can make me meet musicians who want more money.
Right.
But those aren't always the musicians that or the people that I want to spend time around, or money's not going to buy you a more interesting personality. It's not going to get you better in touch with yourself. It's only, I really like the quote of the things that money can't buy are like a fit body, a peaceful home, and what's the last one? Fit body. I think it's a Naval quote. Fit body, a peaceful home, and a home full of love, and a peaceful mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
100%. I always love to ask people that there's apparently somebody moving in because the elevator is going crazy right now outside of our condo. It's nuts, and my headphones are picking up like crazy. I always love to ask friends that also came from lower middle class upbringings, like myself and like Britt. Did you have, or now, do you have more of a abundance mindset when it comes to money, or a scarcity mindset? Because I grew up with not a lot of money around me at all, single parent household, and I grew up with, now that I'm an adult, an abundance mindset.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, oh, that's what I don't want. I don't want that what I was raised with for the first 18 years of my life. I want abundance.
Totally.
And I think I'm worthy of it. Whereas my girlfriend, she was raised in a very similar scenario, not a lot of money in the family at all. And so she became an adult and said, oh, I'm not worthy of certain things. Oh, I can't afford that. I can't do this. Like, that's out of our budget when it's not, right?
Facts.
And at its core, we actually were raised in very similar scenarios. So what are your thoughts?
My thoughts, that's a cool share, man, because I feel like I relate to that a lot. I feel like I've kind of switched between you and Britt many times in my life. But for me, it kind of depends, because to me, it also is a matter of being realistic. And being realistic isn't always being realistic. It's like acknowledging that bias is really important. But for me, it's being aware of the fact that if I optimize for just not having to worry about money, if I optimize for not having to worry about what I have, it makes it way easier to believe that I have access to more. Whereas if I'm putting myself in a position where I'm constantly like, I feel like people get caught in the cycle a lot, and I found myself in it a couple times, but I'm pretty good at avoiding it. I'm really good at like being thrifty but not cheap. So I make sure that I'm not like buying like low quality food and like bad stuff just to save money. Like, it's not like canned beans and stuff like that. It's like I'm buying nice good lean meat, good vegetables, good stuff. I'm trying to do so in a way that is like the most efficient that I can, both with my time and my money. I'm not like some people are like going straight to Whole Foods. They're buying like too much food for their fridge. They're throwing out half of it at the end of the week.
Right.
That stuff would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
I'm more like go to the grocery store, get the best stuff that I can get, do my research on understanding why it's the best stuff that I can get, understand how I can like really stretch my dollar to like its sweet spot where I'm feeding myself and I'm taking care of myself in the best way. Same with clothes. It's why I love the process of like going thrifting or going because it's such a valuable skill that I've had to accrue over time, like of learning how to be super abundant and like not be afraid to like drop $400 on something if it warrants it. But at the same time, like the other day I bought like my favorite suit I've ever bought, which is now in a closet with other suits that I've bought for like over, $300, $400.
Yep.
I got it for $13.
Killer.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's not being afraid of not equating, like of knowing what your taste is. Mm-hmm. So if you're at like a nice restaurant and like a dish costs $80 and you're like, yeah, screw it, I'll eat it. Or even a dish costs like $150, you're like, yeah, okay, tonight's the night. But also not being afraid to like not conflate money with value. So I think that abundance has to do with both. It's like, yeah, I definitely grew up with that sense, but my mom's also just like, wasn't very money wise. She just didn't really understand how it worked. And therefore she just used it liberally to make sure that my brother and I had the best life we possibly could. She was not even, we wouldn't even talk about saving. We wouldn't talk about like good money habits. She wouldn't like put her stress on us at all. She was actually really good about that. But one day I found out that she was like, she went into a lot of credit card debt just so like my brother and I could go on like school trips and could like have a good life. And that let me know that like money is just a thing and you can trade it in for a good life. And I'm actually really grateful that my mom did that. Even though she definitely tanked her own financial future because of that, it was like a critical time in my life where it was really important for me to like get good food, for me to like not feel super stressed out about money. And she did her very best with what she had to ensure that was the case. So I think like you, like I kind of gained a fair amount of abundance, which is like, I think the natural state. I think you don't have to go overboard on abundance. You can just like, you can just be like, yeah, all right. Like that thing is inexpensive, but it's not cheap. And that thing is expensive, but it's kind of crap,
Exactly.
You can have that discernment.
I completely agree with you. And that I think it's also about training your brain in the long term to tell yourself that as long as you have a sense of financial literacy, which a lot of people don't have
totally
when it comes to savings, investing, even spending within their means. If you have a fundamental basis of that and you're not spending beyond your means and you're being somewhat logical, I think it's actually an advantage to yourself to live in that abundance mindset and to give yourself things that you're choosing to be worthy of so that over time, over hundreds or thousands of decisions, you've now programmed into yourself a certain state of who you are, a certain state of being, or like put yourself at a certain level. And the opposite is also true, where if you just say no to everything because you think you're not worthy or can't afford it or whatever, you also put yourself at a certain level and train your brain that way over months and years and thousands of decisions.
How do you look at that? Because like I'm looking around your apartment right now, and the thing that I really notice is that, and I've always noticed from knowing you, is that you're incredibly good at curating your taste to fit the aesthetic that you've decided on. It's clear to me that the aesthetic that you've decided on isn't just something you woke up one day and decided. It's like been like a progression of many decisions.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like I look at your couch, I look at the way you've set up, and everything is very tidy. I see a combination of items that are like, these studio monitors, for instance, I know are not like the most expensive ones, but they're really aesthetic and really nice. There's a sense of discernment in there. You thought about it. You weren't just like, whatever, the gray crap Amazon things.
Totally.
You're like these are nice items, and then I see the Apple AirPods
Yep.
Max. I see like a good monitor. I see good items. Like this couch. And it's clear that you were discerning when you made these decisions, but you weren't frivolous. You were like understanding of the fact that like this is value and this is not value. Like you're not out there getting like an insane espresso machine, but you're getting a good espresso machine, right?
Completely.
And it seems that that's something you take pride in too. Right?
It is, yeah. I'm a believer that everything that we interact with our senses, whether it's what we see, what we touch and feel, what we smell, everything has a huge impact on how we act and how we present ourselves to the world. And I think about that a lot with not only things in my home, but my fashion. A lot about my fashion, what I wear, how the house looks, how I present the house. And what I mean by all of this is not only for other people, because yes, it's great to get compliments on your outfit and how the house looks or whatever, but more so how you interact with all the things in your life. And
definitely.
If your house is chaotic and your outfits are lazy and you're not putting any care into anything that your senses are interacting with on a daily basis,
totally,
you will react a certain way to that without even realizing it. And it's the exact same reason why when you put a suit on, you immediately feel better. Like definitely. You immediately feel like $1 million. That's you look like $1 million because you feel that way.
Totally.
Not that you should wear a suit 24/7, but it's the thesis that all of these surroundings, all of these peripheral things that you don't even realize are impacting you really are.
Definitely.
Yeah, and so we balance that out with, well, what can we afford? Like, we're not going to buy the nicest possible espresso machine or the best watch or the best speakers or whatever just to maximize our exposure to these things. We can't afford them.
Yeah.
Right? If we could, and when we can, that's a completely different question.
Totally.
So we balance out what will maximize our impact on our day-to-day life for ourselves and what can we afford and what do we actually just like. That's kind of like the overall formula for it.
And would you say that feeling that you're trying to engender in yourself, regardless of what it is, because even still, it's like, I'm curious about how this experiment keeps going. Because as you continue to accrue more money, as you continue to accrue more opportunities, and it doesn't seem like that's why you do it. To me, it doesn't seem like you do this for the sake of money. It seems like money comes as a side product of things that you just find joy in participating in. Because you're working with brands that you really like, you're working with models that you really like, you're working with just like any subject of your photography and any people you choose to spend time with. I can tell that you have a great discernment for how they bring joy into your life.
Yep.
And so I'm really curious how that experiment will extend, because even using the espresso machine as an example, it's like, I'm sure you have a question in your head as to whether if you were to buy an espresso machine that was 10 times the price, whether it would truly actually bring you that proportional amount of joy.
Right.
And if so, like, there's discoveries, like I found that discovery for myself. Yes. Where it's like surrounding pieces of musical gear, but also clothes. It's like, clothes are a great example because there's so much more used than anything else in our life. And I found for myself that there's kind of a sweet spot with clothes. It's like, that sweet spot is like, there's like a certain amount of attention. Like sometimes for me, it's like, I'd go out to a freaking Value Village and I want to buy a suit. I'm just like, all right, suit, probably gonna spend like $70 on it. I'm like, okay, $13, crazy. But at the same time, that's not something that I can expect every time. That requires attention and discernment. There's value that goes into that decision. And I'm sure that it's the same for you when it comes to any of these things. As you get more access and you get more desire and you get more of a sense of where you derive this joy, that you discover that these things actually are not proportional in terms of the joy that they provide versus how much they cost.
Everything, for me, everything is a feeling.
Yeah.
And everyone has different things that they have feelings towards. And so in your example of an espresso machine, Britt and I love coffee.
Yeah.
We love to make our morning espresso every single morning, but you have to be honest with yourself with what is the point of diminishing return.
Totally.
And you're right. We could keep upgrading that machine to the point where it's obnoxious.
Yeah.
And it's thousands of dollars and we have a 20-minute routine of coffee. But to us, what is that feeling and what does it actually give us a net positive result
Totally.
on our life? And that's not to call yourself out. It's not a yes or no question. It is genuinely a constant quiz that I'm giving myself with everything in my
Exactly.
life.
It's just something to pay attention to.
100%.
And that's why I'm really curious, because I don't think that the answer is I don't think that the answer is even remotely certain. You know, like
with you, with music, with me, one of my passions is watches, right? Somebody that could be a collector of these things, like guitars, for example, or with watches. Somebody from the outside might say, how can you possibly own 50 guitars? What is the difference? What's the point? And you would say, well, there is no point. There is no actual tangible point to me owning 50 watches or 50 guitars, but it's a feeling.
Yeah.
It's a feeling that it gives you. And yes, it might not make any actual logical sense, and it might be over the top and overabundant, but if it gives you a feeling in the one chance that you have at this life, what's the difference?
But it's also what it signals too. Like you notice that there's a huge feedback for where it is that you get your rewards for. Because if you go in the world and you're very like discerning about everything in your life, but you're very attentive to the smaller things that you choose to put on your body, I found like a great deal of importance in that too. Where like when I see somebody who has a really nice watch, partially because of you, you know, because I see your passion for watches, I understand that there's like a discerning quality. And there's something about that discerning quality where like you see somebody who has like a watch that is clearly more expensive than their car, you know, it shows them that they value like beauty and subtlety more than they value things that are like obvious to everybody. Like a really nice,
like a big house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A big house is obvious to everybody. But if you have a really nice watch, there's a subtle, delicate signal that you're putting out there in the world,
right?
That's saying, I am discerning. I am, and I care about the beauty of this thing. And it's like a signal to all the other people who also think the same thing,
right?
And those people are really interesting.
Yep.
That's something that I've really noticed is like I meet a lot of people, and the people who are the most interesting to me are the people who they're not boasting wealth, but when it comes to caring about nice things, they care about nice things in a way that is like discerning, and they put time and attention into it, and it has a sense of practicality to it. That includes their body. It's like when I meet somebody who has like I can tell they have like a really well described fitness routine, or they're like really attentive to a certain thing about a certain skill that they have, like even like playing music. Like that's why musicians are such interesting people.
Yes,
because they care about that in the same way. It's like nuance. It's like a watch. It's a deep nuance that isn't boasting. It's like you can't obviously see it to everybody. It's not saying status but when they get in front of a piano or they put a trumpet in their hand, they're filled with a sense of joy. And there would be like a little bit of showing off, but that's okay. It's like a positive kind of like showing people and sharing something they find joy in. And I think it's the same thing with like, if you have money to spend, it's like find something that you really care about and that has a lot of meaning to you. And you have to use discernment in order to get, because it's the same with watches. It like, I have this understanding too that like watch value is like, the more expensive the watch, it just means the more excited you get when you get it for less money because you're discerning and you're able to like find it that way.
Yes.
That's the way it seems to me. It's the same thing with guitars. It's like the best guitar isn't the guitar that you paid the $6,000 up front for. It's like that is a clear sucker. You know, it's the best one is like you found like an estate sale.
Right.
And, like you were looking and you put that attention, which that attention at that time might have actually been worth more than the amount of the full guitar.
I also go back to what you were saying earlier about just feeling in general.
Yeah.
There is going to be guitars in your life and watches in my life and whatever it is that you collect out there. Ones that are really, really inexpensive in your collection and ones that are very expensive. And you'll find that there might be ones that are really inexpensive that mean more to you.
Definitely.
Because of a feeling, because of a nostalgia, an attachment that you have to it that is not about money at all, which is back to what you were saying, that money is just a thing.
Totally.
It has no linear or parallel correlation to how much you enjoy the thing.
What watch made you fall in love with watches that you had?
That I own.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I don't know if there was one that I owned that made me fall into watches. Let me think though, if I still own it too. That's the other question.
It's that feeling of having it on of like understanding how it works, understanding the nuances that you enjoy about it. Like what made you look at it and really dive in? Like what made people notice what?
Do you know what originally got me into watches? I'll answer your question without actually answering it.
Totally.
What originally got me into watches was my love for John Mayer.
Right.
And once I understood how public he was about his watches and watching interviews and understanding that whole world of him, that's what really got me into it.
That's an even more beautiful sense, because like that admiration that leads you down that path, you're like, there's something discerning about this guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't even about the watch, it was about who was talking about the watch.
Totally.
Yeah.
And how they're talking about it.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And I had so much trust and authority based with that person. And then I found a passion for watches through that.
Because he has a very discerning relationship with watches. Like it's not, he's not just wearing like the nicest Rolex or like
Exactly.
crazy insane Seiko. He's wearing like a Casio, like whatever from 1990, whatever. You know, like he cares about like the timeliness. It's kind of like sneakers.
Yep. And back to the nuance, it's like he might be wearing the nicest Rolex, but it's also a version of that Rolex that no one knows about.
Totally.
That the person beside him is definitely not wearing.
Definitely.
Even if it looks the same, it's not. Like that's the level of nuance that somebody like John is at, and that's what I love about watches.
And it's also the fact that like he could be wearing like a watch that was like $100 back in whenever it was made, but people know that he has like the crazy collection. And that he's choosing to wear this watch.
Completely.
Yeah. It's really cool because I feel the same way about cars. Like I've really grown to love cars in the past while. The only reason that I've grown to love cars is because, first of all, because my dad has been fixing the same 1998 Honda Odyssey for the past like 20 years. Like he's like legitimately obsessed with
Honda
like,
Odyssey's wild.
I know, it's crazy. Like he's replaced the engine. He's like fiberglass the body. Like he is like, this is like his like ship of Theseus. He's like he like wants this thing to. I think it's actually done now. I think it finally kicked the bucket, but he's been obsessed with this thing forever, and it really inspired me in the way that like the value of a thing is really proportional to the amount of care that you put into it, and that also speaks to where it is that like. That kind of care is irreplaceable. It's completely, it's something that you have to not you have to not rid yourself of, just for the sake of like bad feelings from other people or people not understanding why you feel that way.
Yep.
You know, like I feel the same way about my car because I've put so much work into it, but it's not even like money. It's just like I've changed my own oil.
Yeah.
Like and it's also the story that I have with it. It's like, it's gotten me around in like a time where I really needed to get around, and it never failed me. And there's something that's really beautiful about that, about how it delivers your, it delivered your needs for so long. And there's like a relationship that you have with it. And if there's a place for that thing in your life, then it's valuable to have that sense of sentimentality, because that blooms into different objects as well. It's like that determines how you pick your newer objects, is like where it is that the story brings you in terms of what it means to you. More, and it could just be a brand, like you could just like a brand, but it's more than just that. It's like if you have like a range of items, guitars are a good example. Like I still have the Strat that I've played since I was like probably like 22.
Exactly.
You know, and I'll have that Strat forever. Like it's got so many dings in the body. I'm not selling it. But many other guitars I've chosen to get rid of. But I'm really glad that I chose to keep that guitar, because I've grown to like care for that sense of sentimentality. So do you think that there's anything that you've developed a relationship with in your life that seems to have that sense of sentimentality for you?
Yeah, definitely watches. Yeah. I would say
it's nice and compact.
Yeah, it is, honestly.
Yeah.
Watches is probably the first one that comes to mind. Oddly enough, images, like me as a photographer, obviously, but there are images that like I look at and rehash from years prior. I look at them all the time.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and they're not an overly tangible object, but again, something I just can't ever just like delete and
Definitely.
get rid of. Like, it's
100%.
so, that is so
It's
interesting.
precious.
Exactly. And I think it's so important that everyone finds that thing in their life that they can hold tangible and have a feeling towards and just be like obsessed over.
Totally.
I have a friend who works in tech out in Seattle, and his best friends, they worked with him at the company and then left to start their own company, and now they're making insane money, like $100,000 a week,
Wow.
making apps and stuff that I won't name on here. And my friend was telling me his friends that make this crazy money are the most boring people ever. Like,
Totally.
he spent a month with them in traveling, and all they wanted to do was go to the bars and meet women.
Yeah.
Like, all the time. That was it. And they came to my friend asking, like, how do you have hobbies and interests? Like, how do you actually get into that? And I was like, that, it reminded me so much of, I believe it was also a Naval quote where it goes, he had a ton of clients that were all billionaires, and they were so poor because all they had is money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. 100%.
And it's so weird. Like, obviously, you don't want to be poor of money and have all these hobbies. Like, that's no fun either. You want to have both.
Totally.
But it is really important to find those things.
But it is also a matter of being like, I mean, I hate to be trite with this, but being poor is really a mindset. Like, it has very little to do with how much money you have in your bank account. I know this from my experience of, like, if you're able to grow an abundance of a skill, of interests, of, like, if you spend all your time making money, you're not going to be doing anything interesting.
Right.
But if you spend some time not even thinking, like, putting money completely to the side and just being like, this is the thing I'm interested in. I'm just going to take a chance on it because it brings me a lot of joy.
Yep.
And then you might, for a long time, experience this dip, right? You might experience this dip of like, you know, you've stopped caring about money. You kind of let yourself go in certain ways, but you keep focusing on whatever this thing is that you like. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing holding you to anything. You experiencing that dip, when you come out of that, you are so much more of an interesting person that it's no longer about like you buying nice dinners. It's now about other people buying you nice dinners. It's now about like the wealth that you're able to offer in your embodied self, where people who have money in the same way you're describing, it's like, if you're a person who has hobbies and interests and a sense of joy and a sense of abundance, people with money are going to want to be around you.
Yes.
And that is just going to make your journey of being a person who has money way easier, because you can literally just ask them like 5 questions and be like, so how do you think about money? How do you do this? How do you do that? And they'll tell you very clearly, like they'll give you the tools that you need, because they'll grow to love you because you have this sense of yourself that is imbued with joy and abundance without having to have money. So abundance, I feel like, for if anyone's listening, abundance is a sense that you have is that you have enough. Abundance is a sense that it's not that you have the most in the world. It's not comparing yourself to anybody else. It's not having like a certain number in your bank account. You can, like, I feel like, acknowledge that need within yourself, where it's like you feel safer when you know you have some money invested and stuff like that. But it also is the acknowledgement that you have to work on the fact that the economy could fall apart and everything could fall away. Like the world could 2008 you know, like
Yeah, completely.
It's always within the realm of possibility. We're always existing in a realm of constructs. So whatever constructs you have the most control over are the constructs that are the most meaningful, and those typically have to do with how you embody yourself, which is like what we're all seeking anyway. It's like, when we're looking to look all clean and like we're gonna have a nice outfit and have a nice car and have like beautiful women around us and stuff like that, we're just trying to be like a person who is filled with joy and filled with confidence, because they know, you know, that's like those are the kinds of things that a person like that could get.
Right.
And so when you embody that, you're like, I'm a really interesting person. Look at all these things that I have. But then you actually talk to a person who has those things, and you're like, oh, you just worked toward looking like you.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that both of us in our lines of work, we meet a lot of people like that, but we also meet a lot of people who like defy that, you know, like expectation. And so
it's funny how you can feel that when you meet someone, eh?
Totally.
Yeah. Like, you actually can't. I mean, fake it till you make it is a very common phrase, but you can feel it for sure.
You can feel it. You can also feel lapses in it. You know, like you can feel it from somebody where you're like, I think you have a lot of potential, but like you're in the dip right now.
Yep.
You know, like you're in the dip.
Yeah.
You need to spend more time down there. You need to like experience that more. And to me, like I love that acknowledgement because that's been offered to me so many times. And I also offer it to other people where I'm like people are asking things from me and I'm like, I'm happy to give it to you, but it's not what you want.
Right.
Like I know it's not what you want because I've been there. It's like you don't want a feature with me. You don't want like me to collab with you. You don't want like this service that I'm offering. You don't want this like for me it's often lessons. And I'm like, man, you just need to like acknowledge that you kind of feel bad about yourself. And that like you just need to live with that feeling for a minute and come to terms with it and realize where it's actually coming from and be in that space for a while. Like somebody asked me for a guitar lesson. I've kind of like a Jewish conversion rule when it comes to it. If you're like they have to like approach you 3 times thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's like Jewish people don't proselytize. They like it's very hard to get into that religion and it's just because you have to really want it. Like you have to really want it. You can't be like, maybe I'll become a Jew today.
Yeah.
You know? You have to be like, you have to think about it and really like approach your Jewish friend and be like, take me to shul. And they're like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to ask a few times. And it's the same thing with guitar lessons. I treat it with the same because I'm like, okay, you really want it. And then when we actually sit down with the guitar lesson, I'm not like giving them exercises. I'm like, so why do you want to play guitar?
Exactly.
Like, do you want like girls?
Right.
Or do you want like people to think you're cool? Like,
right.
Like what do you? And they're like,
yeah.
like, what? And I'm like, yeah. Like, what are we doing this for? Like, because that's gonna like, because all it really comes down to is the amount of time you spend doing it,
yes.
and the amount of time you spend in that trench, enjoying that space, before you can actually get out of it. And so, yeah, it's a deep sense because you can really smell it on people, but it's important to leave them in that space so that they can. And I think that's the beautiful thing about a city too.
Yeah.
It's because in a city, it's like you don't have enough. There's so many opportunities to spend so much time with so many different people. You don't have time to spend time with people who are just living in that space. You have to let them be. And there's nowhere that you can possibly feel more lonely and more scarce than in a city.
Right.
It's impossible to feel that. Like rent's expensive. There's people everywhere. They're not paying attention to you. You feel lonely. But it's important to acknowledge that feeling, to take responsibility for it and to live in it.
Yep.
You know?
Speaking of guitar lessons.
Yeah.
I'm going to get something from my bedroom.
Okay.
Because we're going to transition to my next question. Okay. Give me 1 second on this real quick. For those listening at home, I am passing Kieran a guitar. Can you give me explain like I'm 5 version of why some songs sound happy and other songs sound sad?
That's a fun question. Can you hear it through the mic?
You can.
So it has a lot to do with energy, right? Like if somebody's smiling, they're not necessarily happy, right? Like you the same way you're kind of describing this feeling of knowing when somebody is, somebody has the energy of somebody's like actually interested in stuff and actually has like that brightness to them. It's kind of the same thing with music where it's an energy. It's not like about really simple way that people describe it is like major chords are happy, minor chords are sad. But that's not always true. Like if I play like this with this energy, like we're not sitting here being like, what a sad song.
Right.
There's an energy to it, right? But if I go, you might think that's a bit more sad, right? This energy. It's like what is happiness and what is sadness? I think that joy is an energy of joy is emotion. It's like I like the Naval quote, happiness is peace in motion. I think about that when it comes to music too. It's like, what is peace in motion? Peace in motion is like somebody who doesn't have worries, concerns, they're content, but they're moving, they're dancing, there's something that they're doing. So it's like what visualizes peace? It's like serenity. I'm moving through this whole wide world, giving something of myself You know, it's about the lyrical content. I'm feeling like a sunrise. I'm filled with joy and wealth. If you make it about, like, you can be really basic with that lyrical content and you can really make it just like obvious. Right. But even then, if it's too obvious, there's somewhat of a subtext of like, if you're saying that, it's like, where's the but? You know, like, yep. Are you saying there's going to be a but? It's like, and that's always the subtext when you see people who are like overly filled with joy. There's like just too much. They're compensating for something. You know, they're not acknowledging it. So I think it's the same thing with music, where there's always a curve, there's always like an arc, there's always a story that's being told. Yep. So with music, it's like you can play like a loop or like an idea that can be happy, but it's always the most satisfying when there's some kind of arc to it. And it's not always this happy, sad dichotomy. Sometimes it's like an energy dichotomy, like low, high energy. But I think that like the Explain Like I'm 5 version is that happiness is a content, peaceful feeling with a lot of motion. Right. And sadness is a heaviness. And so whatever you're playing, like even again, if it's these major chords, it's like, I can really add the heaviness to this, right? I can be like, and I'm covered in rain. My woman left me again. You know? Yeah. Heavy.
Right. Totally.
And I feel to myself all this strife and pain. But then I can go to a minor chord and I can make it happy. But I got everything I need. Yes, I got everything I need. 'Cause what is a man if not himself? No, I'm saying my way.
But what do you think it is about music, especially when you jam with others? What is it that makes us laugh? Have you thought about this ever?
A lot, because laughing is one of my favorite things to do with music.
Yeah.
I think what I love about music that makes you laugh is the fact that there's so many expectations that are involved in music that you can defy them. And you can also defy them in a way that's tasteful. Like you can just defy them in a way like, there's one time I wrote the song, I was like maybe 20. And my friend who's now like a crazy PhD in like classics, I haven't talked to him in years, but I really love that guy. His name's David Douglas. And he was like, he pulled out this Greek word on me. It's called pathetic. Bathos.
Oh my God.
Pathetic. So it's pathetic, but with a B. And it's essentially means that like you put something in that doesn't fit so much, it's offensive.
Wow.
So it's like sometimes you put a swear word somewhere and it's just like, you're just like,
right.
The hell? Like this is so gross. So it's kind of that feeling, but the opposite of it. Is like that feeling of like something doesn't belong somewhere, but it so does. And it's when it defies an expectation so much that it like fills you with that energy. And sometimes it's in the form of a tingle, sometimes it's in the form of like a tear. But laughter, I think, is like the best description because it's such like a full body tickle. It's a surprise,
right?
You know, and you know that somebody's deeply titillated when they experience that laughter, because it's saying something to them that's true from a place they would never think to expect it. And so for that reason, it's like, I think that laughter is such a beautiful thing in music. I love it especially because I love jazz. And like in jazz, if you hear somebody do a solo and they're locked in, but then you see like a moment of awareness where they're looking at the band and they're like playing some kind of quote, or they're like doing something and it makes the other band members laugh because they're like oh no. You know, like they'll do something like that, like it just makes the band members laugh. And the idea is that it takes something that you like know and you have an understanding of, but you don't expect it in that place. And that's like the beautiful thing about jazz is that it like encapsulates that. It encapsulates that process of just like joking around with your friends.
It's like one big inside joke.
It is, yeah. It's one big inside joke, and it's one big conversation where it can be just as like serious and cool and like deep and like emotional and sad and like with it is whatever. It's whatever you're feeling, but when you're hanging out with your friends, what do you want to do the most? Are you at a funeral, or do you just want to hang around and laugh? So it's that kind of thing where it's like, when it comes to music, sadness really comes from a place where sadness is a lonely feeling. And it can be a communal feeling, but you have to kind of have to get into it by yourself. It's like, if you go to a funeral or something, it has to do with your personal relationship with the person. It doesn't necessarily it has to do with the community, but it's like everyone had a relationship with this person. So that's what really drives their sadness.
Right.
Whereas like when you're at a wedding, it's like joy is something that you can kind of share with anybody. It's like, like joy is like, you're happy to feel joyful with somebody who's like smiling at you on the street if you're open to it. So like I was at two weddings this past summer with my girlfriend, and she cried at both ceremonies. Like, she didn't really know the people as well as I did, but like she cried at both ceremonies just because she was sharing in the joy,
right?
You know, and it's that process of being open to it. So I think that's really what it's about. It's about that energy. It's a lot of what we were describing before. It's just like that feeling of motion.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's beautiful. Can you explain? Last guitar lesson, I promise.
No.
Can you explain? Give me like a 2-minute Cole's notes on the importance of chord progressions in modern day music, in the sense that, like, I don't think a lot of people that are obviously not in music understand how fundamental and how kind of back to what you were saying, where it doesn't actually matter what the key is, what the chords are, minor, major. It's the energy you're putting towards a song. I'm a novice guitar player, like whatever. I can play some campfire songs, and so novice that sometimes when I find a new song, I'm like, oh, I really want to learn that, and I look at the chords and I realize, oh, it's the exact same 4 chords I've always played, but just with a different energy to it, right? So what is a chord progression, and how important is it to building music?
Well, I would say it's probably it's probably like the 4th most important thing. Like maybe like 4th or 5th, maybe sometimes 3rd. Like it depends. Like sometimes a song is all about the way the chord progression sounds. Somebody just found something magical. But if you only have like 12 chords in a key, or sorry, you only have 7 chords in a key, and as a result of only having 7 chords in a key, if it's a pop song, you're normally going to make it diatonic. And
what does that mean?
Diatonic means it's in the key. So it's like if it's C major, you only have the chords in C major, which is C major, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, C. Okay. And you're probably only going to use 6 of those chords. And overall, it's like most of those chords, the most important ones are the major chords, and then like a couple of the minor chords. And then you have like minor keys, which follow the same rules, but it's follow slightly different rules, but it's pretty similar. So you only have so many chords to work with. And then you know that there are these constraints where chords are really important, like guideposts for emotion. And so the chords have to be tied to the story. Like the chords are the scenery in the story. If you have a story that goes way too overboard in the scenery, it's like, what's the setting? Right. It's like, are we like if you're watching a scene and the setting is constantly moving behind the characters, where even are we? Yeah. What are we doing? Like, what's the context that we're in? And so it's not exactly like, I can't describe mountains with chords, but maybe I can, but like it's not about the actual physical imagery, but there's a musical imagery that we're trying to paint. Yes. And that musical imagery, it's like in that same way, like mountains aren't sad. This room is not a sad place, but this room can be a sad place depending on the story. If the story is really described, the emotion in the music, and you notice this in classical music a lot, the emotion in the music is really described by the melody, the rhythm, more than anything. The melody and the rhythm are like the most important things. When it comes to lyrical music, lyrics are somewhere up there. And lyrics have subsets where it's like the meaning of the words and then the sounds of the words. So it's like if you listen to rap, where it's like amelodic to a degree, like some rap's quite melodic, but much of it is amelodic. It's like all you're really working with is the rhythm of the words and the sounds of the words and the meanings of the words. So the sounds of the words are like things that are alliterative, like the titillating tree topped the talking taco, you know, like it's just, there's so much like sharpness in there. Yep. So something that we don't normally pick up on, but when it comes to how chord progressions play into that, when we compare that to melody, when we compare that to lyrics and the subsets of lyrics, it's like, it's very unimportant. It's so unimportant that you don't really need it. It's like I can be like my mom likes to do this. She likes to go, "Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling." It's the middle of a party. "From glen to glen and round the mountainside, when summer's gone and all the leaves are falling, 'tis you, for you must go and I must buy. But call me back when summer's in the meadow, and when the valleys hush and white with snow, and I'll be there in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so." And everyone freaks out. Like, it's a party of like 60 people. She's done that my whole life.
I'm coming to this party.
She just whips it out. You know, so sometimes people ask her to do it, but it's demonstrative of the fact that like the melody and the rhythm of the melody, the word sounds and the words, they're king.
Yes.
It's like that's all you need for a song. You actually don't really need chords. But the cool thing about chords, when you recognize that, is when they provide that setting and that foundation, when you juxtapose the melody and the lyrics against them, it creates more depth. So it's kind of like the difference between if you just had like, if you shot a whole scene that was just blurry background, completely the subject.
Right.
It's like, okay, sure, blurry dark background, you don't know what's in the shot. It's like, yeah, that works.
Yep.
But like disembodied head or whatever. But if you have the context of what the backdrop of the scene is, it adds so much context.
Right.
So if I go like, "No, Danny boy, the pipes are calling, from glen to glen and round the mountains aside." Sorry, I'm just figuring out the chords as we go. But if I go, "Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling, from glen to glen and round the mountainside." You know, different context. We're in a different space now. And then you add like rhythm along to it. Like if I did like "Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling."
Right.
So it's like you add a completely different groove to it. And with the kind of music that I play, which I like to refer as groove-based music.
Okay.
Which is like fundamentally the roots of it are like African, where it's you have like Black American music comes from very like melodic, like it was from slaves singing. So it's like a lot of blues, jazz, pop nowadays. A lot of these things come from like people just singing and using rhythm. It's like that's all they had access to. And then chords kind of came later. So it's really about the rhythm and the groove and the melody and the word choices and all these kinds of things that really like describe the thing. The chords are kind of like a new addition from like European music that like added depth to it. But that's kind of how I view it, is like it's important. I love chords. Like I love understanding chords, but they're not as important as like people might think. And you can actually be an excellent songwriter and know like 5 chords.
The reason I asked this whole question to begin with was I've seen a lot of news talking about different lawsuits and stuff like this of big artists getting in trouble because they're using very, very similar chord progressions. And I was always wondering, like, how many chord progression combinations are there that artists can actually utilize?
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with rhythm. So it's like it is foundational, but I think a lot of it actually has to do with like if I play I think Marvin Gaye sued "When your legs don't work like they used to before," and it's not the same as "I've been really trying, baby," right? But it's the same kind of like vibe, like body shake as the song. So I think that like song copyright lawsuits are completely missing the point, and they're really silly. But because everyone's copying everyone at all times, and it actually is good because like if I do my best to copy somebody, the best I'm gonna do is make something new that's pretty cool.
Right.
You know, like if you're really good at copying and you're really good at copying like note for note and word for word and all that kind of stuff, like you're not a very creative person.
Well, exactly.
And so you're not gonna do that well. But if you make a copy that like takes an idea and repurposes it, it's like all hip hop. It's like all hip hop is based off sampling.
Yeah.
So it's like drum breaks that they take from other records. It's like things that they repurpose and recycle and that's beautiful. and people clearly define that as beautiful, and they've got no problem with it.
Right.
But it's not stealing in the same sense. It's only because there is like a precedent that's growing, which is kind of a cancerous legal precedent that creates it creates a opportunity for people to be really predatory with how they view intellectual property.
Right.
It's kind of the problem with copyright in general. It's like copyright is great for protecting. In theory, it's great for protecting, but in actuality, it halts a lot of progress because people are like paying lawyers a lot of money to like come up with like the most insanely creative way of saying that they stole something.
Yeah.
Somebody else stole something. When in reality, if you looked at it, you'd be like, nah, not really. Like,
yeah. What part of a song does an artist legally own the IP to?
The music and the lyrics. So publishing, there's two sides of music. There's publishing and master. So publishing is the music and the lyrics, which is essentially like the stuff that you could just sit and play on an acoustic guitar that basically has nothing to do with the music is the chords and the basic rhythmic structure and the fundamental kind of idea. And then the lyrics and the melody.
Okay.
So those are kind of separate. Like if I get together with my band and we write like a chord progression with lyrics, and then I go write the words, I have rights to publishing rights to the music, whatever proportion. Like 4 of us get together, I have like a quarter of the music, and then I have 100% of the lyrics. So that means that I end up with like 62.5% of the total publishing.
Okay.
But if I go and like write the music with one part and then write the lyrics with somebody else, then I split the lyrics with somebody, and that's how the publishing gets split up. And the master is just the recording. So it's like who owns the recording is basically who funded the recording. That's like the legal default.
Okay.
So it's like if you get together with like a group of people and you pay some money for the recording studio and like you record a thing, you own the master effectively, unless another agreement has been come to terms with.
Okay.
So like for this podcast, even though like I sat down and I chatted with you, it's like because you produced this, you own the master.
Right.
But because you and I got together and talked, we both own the publishing. Yeah. So
that's fascinating.
So it's like if I choose to go and re-record this, then and I don't because we both own 50% of the publishing, you feasibly could sue me for re-recording this podcast.
Sure.
You know, word for word or like whatever I use in the podcast. But if I go and re-record it, and then I would own the master to that. It's the reason that Taylor Swift re-recorded all of her songs.
Oh,
it's because she signed over her masters to Scooter Braun, who then sold them. And then when she signed over her masters and Scooter Braun sold them, she no longer had access to the revenue that those masters generated. She only had access to the publishing that they would generate, which is based on like other rules that are associated with copyright. I don't exactly know how those work, but a lot of the money is generated by the master. And so she had to recreate the master so that she could then take all those licenses and be like, you know, I don't know if she still had any master rights or if those old recordings are still out there, but they probably aren't or whatever. She probably could like take them away from her own likeness or whatever.
Right.
And then that means that she owns all the revenue from.
Fascinating.
So it's actually more profitable, like for her to record
of
Love Story again and
like spend money to do all that.
Exactly.
Wow. How important is it for artists that are up and coming to understand this side of the business?
It's pretty important.
Okay.
It's only as important, like I just wouldn't sign anything before you understand the side of the business, before you understand what you're really signing off. And it's also like important to because this ruins relationships a lot of the time. So it's really important, like when you're working with other people, to not be super stingy about it, because overall it's like at the end of the day, it's just a few bucks. And the most important thing is for you to have control over your own music. So it's like for instance, I am trying to set a precedent in my own life. It's been tough because I haven't had support in doing it. So I've kind of like kicked the can down the road a little bit because I'm not exactly sure like what proportion of my masters to give away to the people who've worked on the music with me, but I want to give a portion of them. Right. Just because I want, I want to have a precedent where I'm promising skin in the game.
Yeah.
And because that's valuable. It's like if you're working on something and you know that you're going to make some money off of it, in the end, or you're going to do the best job you can. And I think that's a beautiful precedent to set,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I think it's pretty important.
When it comes to the publishing side of it or actually the music music writing side of it, specifically, do each in a band, do all band members own equal parts, or does it depend?
If it's a band,
Yeah.
It depends on the agreement.
Okay.
So they
default?
By default, they would probably create a band entity, which would own it, which they would all own a portion of that band entity. But for instance, like with Spirit of the West,
right.
My dad was not like a member of the board of the band. He chose to approach the band as a freelancer because he didn't want to be involved with the business practices in the band that were frankly like not very good.
Right.
So he kind of protested by being like, I don't want to be a part of it. But that meant that he didn't receive proportional residual master rights. He received like proportional residual publishing, and I think probably a little bit of the master, depending on what they agreed upon.
Yeah.
But he wasn't like a proprietary owner of the music, and so because of that, he received less money for like radio play and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's fine. That's all good. Like I don't know how he feels about this. I haven't really asked him, but I only really heard that from him and didn't really press on it. But
fascinating.
But yeah, it's not de facto that like whoever produced the music owns the master. And production is like, it's the same in movies where it's like a producer isn't necessarily the director. It's not necessarily it's like kind of the person who like allocates the money, gets the people together, gets the idea up and running, puts the money behind whatever is necessary and fronts the upfront capital.
Yeah.
And then the whatever else is just agreement. It's like sometimes you have songwriters sometimes ask for a piece of the master, even though they're not really entitled to it, but they'll like ask for it up front. Sometimes too, it's like a lot of artists won't give their band a portion of master. They'll just pay them for the recording.
Got it.
So it's like, it just depends.
Like Vine-Mode, basically.
Exactly. It just depends.
How do you cover up a mistake when you're playing live?
How do you cover up a mistake when you're playing live? There's no such thing as mistakes. There's only missed opportunities. That's from a TED talk that my friend showed me of this really great xylophone player, a vibraphone player who I forget the name of, but he was amazing. And he made the really good point that like every time you make a mistake on the bandstand, which is like live, like in a recording, it's different because in a recording, it's like, that's now immortalized. It takes a lot to like really make that subtle thing good. But if you listen to my most recent record, Sounds from Deep Down, you'll notice that like if you're really discerning, you'll hear that there are quote unquote mistakes. But it just depends on the confidence with which you play them and play them off. So if I like bum a note live or I sing a note flat or something, sometimes it's just a matter of playing it off. Other times it's a matter of like using it as a source of humor.
Right.
So it's like, if I accidentally mess up a run, it's like I can mess up the run again, on purpose.
Right.
To be like, I noticed that I did that. I'm owning it.
Okay.
So it's like an ownership thing.
Yeah.
It's like how you cover up mistakes is how much you own those mistakes. If you're like, an example of not owning your mistake is to like be like to stop the song and be like, I'm so bad, I'm so sorry guys, like I can't believe I did that. It's like to be a performer is to give people the confidence that you deserve to be up there, and in order to do that you have to have confidence that like mistakes happen and that you're capable of not making them, and a mistake is a reminder that you just need to like put your focus in a different place. Like if I'm playing music, I'm like, I like to say that I like look at pretty girls for a living. It's like, I'm just like, my eyes are looking all over the room. It's like, I'm thinking about the music, but fundamentally there's a lot of sensory input. Yeah. And like, I'm looking at the beautiful environment that I'm playing in. I'm like smiling at the people who are looking at me and all that kind of stuff. And because of that, I'm not always just like eyes closed deep in the music. Right. And sometimes it makes me play better. And other times I lose track of where I'm at, or I like almost forget a lyric, or I'm like, oh, okay, that's where my focus is. It's meditation. So it's like, I'm constantly becoming more and more aware of my habits, my patterns, and leaning in or leaning out or whatever.
Is there like a state of like a transcendent state that you enter when you're playing certain songs in a certain environment, whether live, I'm thinking live, like as a performer? One of my favorite performances that I watch probably monthly is John Mayer Rock in Rio. Awesome. From years ago, playing Gravity. And there's a point in the song where you can definitely see that he just goes to a different dimension. And he's not even there. and he like throws his guitar on the ground, and he's just like, so he may as well not even be in front of 100,000 people.
Totally.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
Up until that point, you can tell he's just performing for an audience.
Yeah.
But what is that feeling like?
Attention is magical. So it's like, even if you get attention from like, sometimes it's just one person who's just like an incredible way that they give you their attention. Other times it's like a room full of people. Like the other night I played a show for a Valentine's gig at Reed's Distillery.
Oh yeah, nice.
And it was like 200 people.
Wow.
And they were all just like paying pretty much perfect attention for the whole 30 minutes that I was playing. And because of that, I was just able to, like, I was empowered by that attention. And so because of that, I was able to like show them a time that was really, I was able to return that favor of that focus. And I was able to like pick up on what they were doing and pick up on what they were paying attention to and think of my own ways that I could make them laugh and could make them feel and could make them think and could make them whoop and could make them, all those different things.
Right.
And to me, the empowering aspect of it is that attention where it's like, it's not about the attention being on you. It's not about you, but it's like you now have this superpower where it's like people are looking at you in all your subtleties. So you have so much space to play and get reaction. So the audience becomes this like supple force that when you push against it, it pushes back against you.
Right.
And that's where the fun is. It's like if people are just paying attention to you and that's all you're basking in, it's like you're not going to really do anything with it. You're not going to play with it. But so you kind of have to risk being like stop. Like what do you do? I my song Green Eyes.
Yeah.
So which you shot the cover for.
Yeah.
So I said, who here is in their first relationship?
Right.
No one put their hand up. And I was like, okay, so we're all run through that. It's that kind of thing.
That's
and I
awesome.
did not premeditate that. That just came to me in the moment. I was like, how do I convey the story of this song? Because like, it's easy to confuse that song's meaning for like, if you're just hearing it for the first time in the moment, or if you just have passively listened to it, it's like, if I'm trying to tell, like prime people for it, it's like, I'm talking about past loves that you have meant a lot to you, but you had to let go. And it's like, how do I say that? How do I relate that to other people? And I'm like, think about your exes for a second. You're with your partner right now. It's Valentine's Day.
Right.
But like, think about the fact that the reason you're here is because of somebody you loved before, and, have a bit of gratitude for that. I'm not saying that out loud. That's what I'm saying with the song. But like, I'm using a form of humor to like drive that. And the only reason I have the capacity to do that, if I had a room full of people who were talking, I would not have the confidence to do that,
You brought up my exact next question, which is a selfish one, about Green Eyes.
Right.
And I want to ask you about, for you personally and the music development process, I want to know what comes first. Is there an order of operations, whether it's lyrical, music? What is the order when writing music? And the reason I ask is because Green Eyes is my favorite song of yours.
Nice.
And it starts with the notes of what you lyrically say in the chorus of "Darling, let me hold you." Right, and that's what you hear just playing on guitar, but then you hear it later lyrically. So what is the order of, for you, how you write a song? Is it music? Is it lyrics? Is it both at the same time? How does that work?
Well, it's like, I think in that John Mayer in that Rick Rubin interview really described it well, where it's like when you have access to these things at the same time, for some people, they can't play an instrument. So that they need to like come up with an idea and have it be like pushed out of them in some way, and they need support. They need like a producer to make a beat. But foundationally, it's just an idea. Like the most important thing is the idea. So the idea is like, it could be anything from like a melody that's really beautiful to just like a lyric that's really cool to like a feeling of a chord progression that feels really nice. Like there's a song I wrote recently, like oh baby, I cried you a whole river with the tears from my eyes. And when we said goodbye, I think about the way that you moved and I die. I just think it's like, I liked that imagery a lot. And then I also like that that contrary motion. And so sometimes it's just like me sitting down with the guitar and just like singing something where I'm like, na, 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 na. Or like, I'll do it now. Like if I go like, I can't stop thinking of you. You fill me with eyes of dew. Sometimes these lyrics don't make much sense, but you have to roll right through. Like it just doesn't.
Yeah.
It like John Mayer described it really well, where it's kind of like a Ouija board, where it just like will follow you to sometimes nonsense and other times, and your capacity as a songwriter to take upon it is just for you to sit down and do that, and to deal with the cringe that might come with it, and to deal with the like. Sometimes you're blanking for a lyric, other times it's just flowing out of you, and it's just that practice of continuing to do that. I find that's the most effective way. But otherwise, like sometimes I'll like be listening to like drums, and I'll be like, that's a really cool drum beat, and I'll like remake the drum beat in Ableton, or like find the drum break, or like take it out of the song, and I'll be like, this is so cool, and I'll just play guitar to it, and then I'll come up with the melody. And like with Green Eyes, I think I was listening to like. It must have been Gravity, and it's kind of an homage to like the chord changes at the same time, like
right.
And then the difference is that Gravity doesn't really have a chorus, but like, so it's not the same song in any way, but it's like the inspiration is drawn from there. It's like I had this feeling about the song that was kind of incomplete.
Right.
And so there's this like feeling that I got from it that wasn't necessarily that well described by the actual song. And so I had to acknowledge the fact that the song itself was incomplete for me. And so I had to complete it. And still like, I feel like that archetype of song, like that like slow, heavy 6/8 or 12/8, I'm really still exploring that. And I love exploring it because like it's such an iconic feeling. But there's so many different ways to explore it. Like there's like Send It On by D'Angelo. Which is like a lot happier.
Right.
A lot sexier. Send it on, send it through. Send it right back to you. And then there's also Untitled by D'Angelo, which also really inspired Green Eyes. So Green Eyes to me is like a combination of Gravity and Untitled. Girl, it's only you having your way. And if you want, you can decide if you have me. I'll give you everything that you desire. Whoa. And then it goes, how does it feel? How does it feel? And the crazy thing is that's also the same chords too. You don't know, babe. So they were clearly also inspired by that. But it's that lineage of like, there's like a lineage of songs.
That explains why I've seen you transition Untitled by D'Angelo.
Yeah, exactly.
Into Green Eyes so many times.
Exactly.
Like, that's brilliant.
It's also like, it's nice because it adds like a layer of familiarity for people who know. Like, and man, nothing feels better than playing that in front of a black audience. Like Friday was like a half black audience. And like I played that song and immediately people were singing along.
Oh,
and like it feels so good because I feel like that's like a it's like there are certain cultures of people, like whether they're born into the same way I am, where me and my brother know all this music and we love all this music, and like a lot of people who like shared and went to church growing up and like have that same sense of music. It's like to share that with people in an unusual way is like a huge thing that drives me to write songs too. Is like, because you can share a shared context.
Yes.
You can share a context with people that you don't share a context with. And that's like, to me, that is like the superpower of music. It's my favorite thing.
Tribes.
Yeah.
Goes back to that idea that we always talk about off podcasts. As tribes. Man.
Totally.
Like when you feel like you belong in a circle, in a group, in a room, in a tribe.
Totally.
There's no better feeling.
There is no better feeling.
It's euphoric, yeah.
And the really cool thing is driving it from a place where that tribe is an unexpected tribe. It's like you wouldn't expect that these are the people you connect with. It's not based on off like any superficial quality. it's based off some kind of soulful connection.
Right.
And that's why I love the name soul music, is because to me, soul music describes, it can be any music, but to me, it describes like it doesn't describe an aesthetic as much as it describes like a way of thinking. And to me, that like is, which in itself could be an aesthetic, but it's like the reason it's able to attract so many people from all over the world, it's not that regional, it's very influential, is because in the same way that like a lot of dance music is really universal, whereas there's a ton of music that's really regional. It's like, right. I feel like in Canada, we have like our very Canadian rock. Yeah. And like it's very tribal music, but it's very like Canadian tribal music. But I love the music that like unites people on a more human scale. And I think that like jazz does that really well. And honestly, Black American music killed it. Yeah. I don't know how they did it. They figured it out. Yeah. I feel like that's the thing that makes like John Mayer's music universal. That's the thing that makes like the thing that makes like artists like Khruangbin or Leon Bridges or like so many other artists that people love, or Tom Misch, or like artists that are...
It doesn't feel regional. Like, it doesn't feel contained.
Totally. Yeah. It might feel like it's from a place, right. But it's not like...
but only for that place.
It's not only for that place. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing. I went to a Kirk Franklin concert. You know Kirk Franklin? Yeah. I went to a Kirk Franklin concert in Brooklyn.
Nice.
And I sobbed. I wept. And it wasn't just because of the music. It was also because of the music, but it was because of the energy of the people around me.
Right.
I was just like, it was an audience full of Black women. And I was just looking around and I was just like, this joy is unbelievable. Like, it's truly unreal. And it's something that's indescribable. Like, people try to encapsulate it, but it's something that's truly indescribable when you're in that kind of space. And I felt that way when I was back on the island, when I went to certain concerts. Like, I went to Herbie Hancock when I was a kid, and I was just like,
wow,
oh my God. Like,
that's crazy.
Like watching Leon Laloa play the guitar and watching Herbie Hancock, like just Herbie Hancock is just having the best time. He's like in his 70s back then. He's in his 80s now. He's going to have the best time playing music until he dies. And that's like the most beautiful thing I could ever imagine.
Wow.
You know, he's living the best life.
How much, this is my last question for you. How much do you care about legacy? And what does legacy mean to you?
I want to know your response to this question too.
You want to know my response first?
Yeah.
I think I've asked this to now a couple of guests on the podcast, and my answer is obviously the same. And it's that I care about how the people that I know personally remember me. But I don't care about making sure I leave this grandiose impact on the world. I think that it's important to leave a net positive result on the world for people that don't know you and do know you personally, but I don't think it should be your goal to be in the history books. I don't think your goal in life should be to be remembered by the masses. That's my simplified answer. Now, what I do care about, though, is that my family, my offspring, my spouse, after I leave, that they remember me as somebody that they look up to and that they're proud of and that they're happy to think of. That's my legacy.
That's beautiful, man. I think that's a really good way of looking at it too, because I feel the same way where, like, I have some people in my family where they're flawed, but I do look back on them with a lot of fondness. Like, even my father, my grandfather, it's like they were flawed people, but they really loved me. And because of that love that they showed me, it kind of ironed over a lot of their problems.
Right.
And we're all flawed. And for that reason, it's like, I want the story of, if there's a story of me, I want that story to be an acknowledgement of the totality of who I am in a beautiful way. Like, I want there to be people who felt my love. And so for what it actually is, and not like just like because I think what goes into that, wanting to have your name in the history books and all that kind of stuff, is like a severe self-focus. And that self-focus can really get in the way of actually experiencing that love. And so for me, it's similar, I guess, where I want to be remembered for the love that I've given people. And I want everything that I do to be as much of an extension of that love as possible, and to be seen and understood as that. You don't always hit the mark, but like, and sometimes fear gets in the way, you know, like sometimes fear of like not making it or not doing well gets in the way. So yeah, I think
like your name in the history books does nothing for you after you're gone
at all.
But what does do something for other people is the impact that you leave with your work.
Totally.
And who you are as a person.
100%.
We talk a lot about work, obviously, but who you are as a person as well.
I would rather inspire people who are great
Yes.
than be recognized as one of the greats. You know?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
What do you got going on right now that you can talk about? Any new music coming out that you want to give us a little taste of?
Something about you. How does it feel to be lovely? Lovely with Jack Page coming out on March 14th. Remember that when he came out to my house? Yeah. We finished that song. Across the Atlantic Ocean, we finished that tune and we're putting it out. I have the image of the thing to show you actually.
Amazing. Can't wait to see.
But it's Jack Page and I are putting out a song on March 14th, and it's gonna be lovely, and it's called Lovely.
We have to shoot one, by the way.
We do.
Yeah.
100%. Oh, that's not the same one.
Dang, life is busy.
Life is totally busy. It's dope. I sent him a bunch of photos here.
For those listening now on video, Kubla's showing me a picture on his phone in 2 seconds.
This is one of the drafts, but it's not the actual one.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so fun.
Yeah, that's great. But yeah, we're doing this. We're just doing these run-up songs, and I'm just gonna be putting out a lot more music the next little while. I've been developing this relationship with my friend as my manager, so I feel like we've created that bond, and I'm really looking forward to what we can create together. There might be a podcast in the works too. There might be other bits of media that I'm looking to produce, and I'm also just looking to tour all around the world, so wherever. And I hope that whoever listens to this, and I'm sure, I'm hoping that it'll be many people. It'd be funny if it was many people in like 2 years. So if it's many people in like 2 years, hello, nice to meet you in the future.
Yep.
Hopefully I haven't said anything unbecoming during that time, and hopefully I haven't gotten in the way of my music. But listen to my record that I recorded a couple years ago, and the record I recorded last year, Sounds from Deep Down and Close to the Sun. And check out all of Josh's stuff.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And where can people find you?
KublaMusic.com. Sign up for my email list, please. And please sign up for my email list. And on Instagram, YouTube, those are probably my favorite places that I like to put content out. So it's probably the best places. But KublaMusic.com, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever, like it's funny. Like for you, I'm sure you have like your main mediums are like Instagram and YouTube.
Yeah.
But as a musician, it's just like so weird because you have to work with like visual mediums as well as auditory. It's
totally.
Content hilarity. It's so funny.
Oh my God. Jesus. Dude, thank you so much for being on the
Thanks for having me, man. This was great.
You. That was a good time.
Yeah, it was great.
That was fun. Thanks for listening, guys. That was good.